All right, this is James the John Economy. Today we're going to talk about oil prices, dock workers, and much, much more. What could happen in the future and much, much more. So let's jump into it. Oil has been tearing up today. People said, "Hey, it's a 4% jump," and it was flying up. Really, it's 4%. It's not that big, but in the world of oil, it can be considered big because oil is a very stable pond, and when you throw a large rock into it, it makes big waves. Right? In other words, all the supply chains are kind of in their thing, and if one thing disrupts that, it makes big jumps. So what happened in the U.S. in the last few days is the dock workers went on strike. Everything from the East Coast, from I think New York, all the way down to Houston, Texas. All the major docks were on strike. What this means is they're not unloading any goods from overseas. This includes not only vegetables and toys and anything that's made in like Germany or something like that we buy, but or IKEA furniture in that case. Also, it means oil and gas. Right now, you might say, "Hey James, we produce a lot of oil here." Now, we do. We produce about 13 million barrels a day, currently a day in the U.S. We also use about 20 million barrels. Right now, you might say, "Oh, we just need to import 7 million," but um, that is a understanding of math, but not an understanding of how oil works and how we work with oil. So my point is this: is the refine once you pull oil out of the ground, right? You have to refine it. Okay, you have to make it usable so we can stick it in, and then you have to get to the gas station so we stick it in our cars, right? Or diesel if you're in a truck, or send it to whatever jet's fueled up. I don't no idea. When I own one, I'll let you know. Okay, but you have to refine it, right? Now, our refineries in the U.S. were built anywhere from the 50s to the 80s, okay? There has not been a new refinery built in the last almost 40 years or more, okay? So these refineries are very detail-oriented, and they are very calibrated to a certain gravity of oil, right? In other words, a certain viscosity, a certain kind of like sludginess, if you will, all right? The stuff that we produce here in America, the majority of that is this light sweet crude. Think about kind of like almost the consistency of olive oil, right? So in your left hand, you got some olive oil in a container, okay? That's kind of what we produce here in the U.S. Now, what we're calibrated for is something that's heavier than olive oil. So if we put a bunch of olive oil through our refineries right now, it won't work very well. We'll bust them. Things will break, or worst case scenario, things will explode. Okay, we are dealing with a flammable object, right? So what we do is we import oil and we export a little bit of sweet crude out to the rest of the world, and we import a little bit of this dark, sludgy crude mess, right, from places like the Middle East and other places in the world, and we take those two and we mix them together to get a certain viscosity or a certain weight, if you will, a certain kind of uh, stickiness, if you will, and that is the correct weight of crude or within that wavelength that we can send through our refineries, and it will produce this amazing gasoline that we put in our cars, or diesel that we put in our trucks, or jet fuel that we put in our jets, or kerosene that we put in our lamps from the 1800s, or whatever. You get my drift, right? So that's how it works. And this is why the Keystone Pipeline was so important, because it was instead of drawing that dark, sludgy crude from across the world, we could just do it straight from Canada, put in a pipeline, and ship it straight down to the Gulf, where it would meet the light, sweet crude, and we could mix it together, and it would just be such a great shortcut, But that didn't. Someone shut that down, which will not be named. He will not be named. Shut that down. So we have to import in some of our oil, not just the oil and gas that we need extra for what we consume, but also we need to produce a little bit. We need to bring in a little more to mix with what we have, so we can get what we need out of it and consume it. So, but as I was doing this research, I found this. But I found this out. U.S. port workers operators reach a deal to end East Coast strike immediately. This is great, great news. Now, what the backstory with this, if you haven't heard, the port workers on the East Coast, not the West Coast, were wanting higher wages, and they didn't want which we all want, right? We didn't automation to not take their jobs to guarantee. Which, hey, no one wants to be replaced by a robot. I think we all understand that. Now, the issue is this: the average dock worker makes between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. Now, it is hard work. I will give them that. Very laborious. It is not an old man's game, right? But they're making 2 to 3 times the average worker, right? The average American worker, and they were given the original agreement was 50% over the raise in wages over the next 6 years. That's great. That's great. They were pushing for 77%, and the fact that they don't want automation to replace their jobs. So currently, they agreed at 62% over the next 6 years, which they got 10 more percent, or of it, I guess you could say 20 more percent of the 50%, which is great. And they'll hammer out the automation thing as hammer out the remaining details of the automation. Right now, this is an issue because the U.S. Is huge in imports exports, right? Especially being from Texas, if you're in the Houston or Ship Channel area or anywhere on the coast, you know that imports exports are huge, right? The issue is China is leading the world in manufacturing now. They have a huge coastline, by the way, huge, and a lot of their stuff is already automated. Okay, so instead of having a bunch of dock workers, they have a bunch of machines doing stuff, and they have one guy looking at 2 to 3 monitors, making sure all the machines are doing what they need to do, right? This is great in a lot of ways. It cuts down on people getting injured and hurt, loss of life, loss of limbs, loss of all sorts of stuff. It's a bit better for the companies because, in the long run, it's cheaper, more efficient. These machines can work all night. You need one person to look over, hundreds of machines at a time, stuff like that, right? There's much more efficiency. And the import-export business is all about efficiency. It is very cutthroat, right? If people can save money by sailing around Africa, they will sail around Africa to save a few bucks, okay? Instead of sailing through somewhere else, okay? Or if they have to sail around South America as opposed to go through the Panama Canal or another canal, they'll do it, okay? If the math works out, they're going to make a switch. So one of the long-term issues that is so important to this is if America is going to stay on top as a world economic power, the imports and exports, we're going to have to get more efficient, and we're going to have to adapt with the times, right? Now, in the short term, the issue that this was solved was, they've got to be very efficient. They've got, whether you want it or not, whether you're ready for it or not, ships are coming in ready to unload, right? They're carrying everything from vegetables to stuff made in Germany, IKEA furniture, all sorts of stuff, to oil and gas and petroleum products, right? All sorts of stuff is flying into these ports every day, every hour. It's not going to stop, right? It's like a bunch of ants working together. They're nonstop. They're just go, 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 right? So the issue was, the real scare was, which is not much of a scare more, is what's going to happen with oil? Is it going to be backed up and stuff like that? And I think that's where this spike came from. Okay, there we go. Well, it'll load. I think that's where this spike came from. And again, you were with me a few weeks ago, almost like a month ago, when it dipped down to the 64. It's kind of a scary time for oil. I wish I'd bought some stock and such. And it kind of came up, popped down, it came up. I mean, that would have been a great swing trade. Get it buying about $64, $65, selling it out 75, 74. Oh, great swing trade, right? But that is the life of oil. It will change by the winds sometimes, just for a time, right? So it could be on its way down this week. We'll see what happens because the Dockworkers have gone back to it. Thankfully, they have. Now, and I will say this right now, that all the people at Costco that you bought all of the toilet paper, because I went today and Costco has had a nationwide shortage of toilet paper just in the last day or two. And again, this thing's only been going for 3 days. You deserve what you're getting. You can take that toilet paper and you can literally sit on it. So, hope you like the pun on that. Anyway, But let's get back to oil and what's happening. If you're in the oil space, you know, or in and around any of the upstream oil space, you know what's happening. So what oil and gas companies are doing, they are drilling, putting holes in this ground, but paying $3 to $4, $5 million a hole to be put into this into the ground. And they're just capping it. They're not fracking at all. So you got to ask yourself, are they wasting their money? Is big oil wasting its money by just drilling holes in the ground? Well, big oil is big oil for a reason. It's not going to do something stupid like that. Now, they're putting holes in the ground. They're capping and they're not fracking, right? So in other words, they're building the foundation of the house, putting studs on, putting stuff like that, but they haven't run wiring or done much past a roof yet. They haven't put paint on it. They haven't got it ready to sell, right? That's where fracking comes in. You fill the earth full of like a lot of pressure with sand and water, and then out comes all sand, water, oil, gas, everything, a ton of it, right? And that's when they make money. Now, we've seen oil and gas companies do this before in the past, right? It was around the middle end of 2021, and ask yourself, what happened around here in 2021? Probably around, I think it was April. I had to check. April to May of 2021, maybe June. What happened is Russia invaded Ukraine, right? They waited till the Olympics were over, and they actually had kind of waited for the ground to thaw, too, to be frank, right? And get out of the muddy season. And they invaded Ukraine, and oil was about where it's at right now. Let's be honest. Except it was on its way up as opposed to just hovering around this red line, this green line. Okay, it was on its way up, and then it just kept going, and it spiked up to 120. I would say 120. Came down to around 90. I think it loaded in the 90s. Then popped back, then hovered around, and popped back up to 120, and then came back down again. Right, and here's kind of where we are today. We broke that. That's not that great, but oil and gas companies are doing the same thing now, right? And so what it tells me is it foreshadows something that, hey, they know oil better than you and I do by far. They have floors of people figuring this stuff out, the price of oil, right? They are the best oil traders in the world, and so they're doing this again. That they were doing right around here. So what that tells me is that oil might hover around here for a little bit, to kind of dink around for it, and then something in this world might make it pop up, and it'll stay up here for a time. Now, if that happens, two things, right? Number one, that is a double top. Okay, there's a top here, comes down for a little bit, comes up, double top, and after double top, things go down. Now, if you look at history, this happens when oil flies up like that. It will cut the legs out of every weak economy that you can see, right? And it will really force that economy down to, unless it's strong, it will put such a weight on the economy that unless that economy has strong legs, it will crush it. Okay, this is what happened in 2008, 2007 and 2008, right? By the way, do you remember the last time the Fed raised rates? Anybody? It was in 2006, I think it was. 2006, maybe 2005. And now the Fed, just last month, cut rates, right? Anybody remember the last time the Fed cut rates? Anybody? It was 2007. That's when they started their last cut. And now they just started their last cut in the end of 2024. So what does that say for 2025? Yeah. I think we're going to head to a recession. So oil is going to come up here. Again, this has been my prediction for a while. Oil will fall. It might not come all the way up. It may kind of come up to right around here. It may not break 100 or whatever, but it seems like it's going to pop into the 90s at least, right? But it could pop up here. If so, or somewhere around here, that would be a double top, technical, right? It would it would stay up here for a while, and a while, I mean, it could bounce up and down for a while, but it'll stay around here for a while. in this red zone, and then it will crush the economy, and then a weak economy will lower gas prices again. It'll probably come back down to the 50s, 45s, 50s for a while, right? And then my partners and I, which if you have interest, let me know, we'll make a ton of money up here, right? Hold on to it, and then reinvest into assets that are in trouble. They could be real estate, it could be oil and gas, it could be stocks, whatever we want to do. We'll reinvest it and at the low time and just wait, wait for a good profit, buy low and then wait for it bumps up, sell high, and get great deals. So now you're asking yourself, James, and if this is true, what could possibly do that? Well, maybe this.
Fire, even fireworks in some Beirut neighborhoods, especially in Hezbollah strongholds.
We are watching Israel be attacked by Iran. They are firing so many missiles, and it's getting through the Iron Dome, and up like 40 or 60 get through the Iron Dome and hit Israel it's seemingly hard, right? And this is why I am glad to live in the U.S. of A., to where I don't have to worry about this stuff. Man, this is crazy. Here's another one.
Lester, if you can hear me, we all the way up on the Israeli border with...
Yeah, you see it everywhere. But they did quite a bit of damage. And here is the leader, the Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel, responding.
אזרחי ישראל, בפתח דבריי אני שולח תנחומים למשפחות נרצחי הפיגוע הנפשע ביפו ואיחולי החלמה שלמה לפצועים. כמו במתקפת הטילים, גם מאחורי הפיגוע הזה יש יד מכוונת ורצחנית. היא מגיעה מטהרן. הערב איראן שוב תקפה את ישראל במאות טילים. המתקפה הזאת נכשלה. היא סוכלה בזכות מערך ההגנה האווירי של ישראל, שהוא המתקדם ביותר בעולם.
But this evening, Israel made a big mistake and will pay for it. Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, what's the big deal with this? James, the Middle East. For one, it is in the Middle East, right? Iran does make about 10% of the world's oil. Okay, so that 10% disruption, again, like I said, the oil market is a very placid pond, and when you throw a stone into it, even a small one is going to make a ripple, but a big one's going to make a very, very large ripple, right? And so the issue is the Middle East is a powder keg, and if anything happens in the Middle East, it's going to create a very large ripple. Now, James, what else could go wrong? Well, let's throw some more gas in this fire. So Israel strikes hit Russian airbase in Syria. Israel strikes suspected near Russian airbase in Syria. So here's the thing. Israel hit Russia's airbase, and from what I've heard, Russia just told all of its citizens in Israel to get out. Now, why would Russia do that? Well, they probably don't want to kill their own citizens by accident. Hint, hint, right? So what could go wrong with this? Currently, Israel and the U.S. are allied. So if you go to war with one, you go to war with the other. Currently, Iran and Russia and China are allied. So if you go to war with one, you'll go to war with all of them, right? So if Israel and Iran go after each other, it could pull the other major superpowers in with it, right? There's a very big chance that could happen. And that would cause what a lot of suspect would be World War III. A little bit scary stuff, right? But even if that doesn't happen, here's one thing that's going to be an issue, right? This is a Strait of Hormuz. Here's the Persian Gulf, and here's the Strait of Hormuz. Iran touches it, and so you have a lot of these oil and gas producing countries that are around it. The big thing is this: if this guy, I think it was 10 to 20%. No, I think it was 20% of the world's oil flows through this strait, right? If this thing gets gopped up or stopped or something like that happens, then it's going to, it will make oil and gas prices surge. Now, James, what could cause that? Well, it's happened before in the past, and Iran has closed this, or at least shut it off, or like turned the valve way down, where it's like, hey, we're gonna inspect everything, etc., that comes through here. Could that happen again? Well, here's dated today, on the 4th. Let's see here. Oh, that's 2019. Excuse me. But it has happened in the past, right? So Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatens to close Hormuz Strait. They have done it in the past, and if they do it, it's going to cause oil prices to spike pretty bad. Now, also the other thing is Iran produces 10% of the world's oil, right? And I forget where their big producing oil fields are. We've already had some of the senators in the U.S. say, hey, let's bomb them, right? Iran is, like Russia, is very oil based. So if you knock out all the ways to produce oil, their economy crumbles, right? And with that, their ability to wage and to keep in a war, right? Because soldiers like to be paid. And drones and other things, missiles, cost money to buy. And so it's going to be it could be pretty great. This is a powder keg waiting to explode, and we've got powder all over the floor, and people are smoking around it right now, right? That's where we're at. That's the kind of situation we're at. So what's going to happen with it? I'm not sure. I can't tell, but I think it's going to be a very crazy election, which, by the way, it's only in 6 weeks or less away. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but it looks like everything is set up for oil to fly up, for this world to be in a lot of turmoil before it gets better. And I think it's going to get really crazy right before the election, and especially right after the election, right? So whatever you do, wherever you are, just make sure you keep you and your family safe. Make sure that I'm in and from Texas, so I can say, hey, buy the appropriate things, the appropriate boom sticks if you need to. And have lots of ammo for them to protect yourself and your family, right? And if you're not in a state that allows that or whatever, I would encourage you to move. But if that's not a viability, just find a way to protect your family, right? Find a bug out place or something with some friends, and just make sure that you and your family is safe. Thankfully, the dock workers are back. And again, if you're one of those people that went to Costco and bought all the toilet paper, and I didn't get any today when I went, then like I said earlier, you can just sit on it. And I love the way that pun sounds, Anyhow, I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope the future is good to all of us. But it is just very, very uncertain. So I think for the oil field, it's going to do great. Especially the assets me and my partners hold. If you're interested in that, let me know. But either way, just make sure you're safe. Make sure you're holding some cash if you decide to, if you think that's prudent. I think it's prudent in these unsure times. But just make sure you and your family are safe. With that, I hope you guys have a wonderful time. It is cooling off outside, which is so nice. Enjoy life as it is, and I'll see you in the next video.